My name is Cynthia. I am 35 years old, and for the past 10 years, I have lived in a quiet suburb with my husband, Howard, and our 7-year-old son, Charlie. On the outside, our home looks perfect, a warm little house with a small garden, a red mailbox, and the laughter of a child echoing through the halls. I have always believed that love grows through the simple things, a shared breakfast, a gentle smile, a small note left on the kitchen table. Howard used to agree with me. We had our little rituals, small but meaningful. Every evening after Charlie went to bed, we would drink Turkish tea together. Sometimes we talked about work, sometimes about dreams we never had time to chase. He would tell me stories that made me laugh until my eyes filled with tears of joy. For years, that was our rhythm, love expressed not through grand gestures, but through presence. I felt safe, seen, and deeply connected to him. I loved the way he listened, how he looked at me as if I were still the same girl he met years ago. Our life was simple, but it was ours. Back then, I truly believed that nothing could change the warmth we had built together. I had no idea that even love, when neglected, can slowly begin to fade. When I think back to the early years of our marriage, I remember sunlight spilling through our kitchen window as we cooked breakfast together, laughter echoing in our small living room, the sound of Charlie's tiny feet running down the hallway. Howard was always patient then. He used to surprise me with flowers after work, and sometimes we would take short trips to the countryside just to escape the noise of the city. He loved driving with the windows down, letting the wind fill the car while we sang along to old songs. I felt proud to be his wife. He shared everything with me, his dreams, his worries, his plans for the future. He used to say that I was his calm after the storm, and I believed him. But time has a quiet way of changing people. Slowly, our laughter became less frequent, our conversations shorter. Howard started coming home later each evening. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was ambitious, always chasing success, and I admired that. Yet as the days turned into months, I began to notice something in his eyes, a distance I couldn't reach. He talked less and smiled rarely. When I asked how work was, he would simply say, "Busy." I told myself it was just a phase, that the man I loved was still there beneath the tired expression. But a small part of me had already started to wonder if he was slipping away. The change in Howard became impossible to ignore. He stopped waiting for me at dinner. He stopped asking about my day. Even when Charlie ran to greet him after work, he barely smiled. He would walk straight to his home office, close the door, and stay there for hours. When I knocked to tell him that dinner was ready, he would simply answer, "In a minute," but that minute often turned into the rest of the night. The sound of his keyboard became the background noise of our evenings. The man who once told me every detail about his day now barely looked at me. I tried to bring him back. I cooked his favorite dishes, the ones he used to say reminded him of our honeymoon. I dressed up again, wearing the red dress he once said he loved. I put on lipstick and waited, heart beating fast like a girl going on her first date. When he came home, I smiled and said, "Dinner is ready." He nodded without looking up from his phone. During the meal, I tried to start a conversation, but his answers were short and dry. It felt like talking to a stranger who happened to share my last name. That night, I couldn't hold my silence any longer. As he sat on the couch, I sat beside him and said softly, "Can we talk?" He looked at me, a little surprised, and asked, "Now?" I nodded. My hands were trembling, but I kept my voice calm. "You've changed," I said. We don't talk anymore. You don't smile at me. You don't even see me. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, he sighed and said, "Of course I love you. I'm just tired. Work is stressful. I have too much on my mind." I wanted to believe him, but a quiet doubt had already taken root inside me. I asked the question I feared the most: is there someone else? He looked shocked, even offended. "No, never," he said quickly. "I don't have time for anything. I just need you to be patient." I nodded and pretended to accept it, but his words didn't touch my heart. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. The steam had faded, and the tea was cold. I stared into the cup and saw my reflection, small, tired, invisible. The silence around me felt heavier than ever. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just the tea that had grown cold. It was us. Days turned into weeks, and nothing changed. Howard's silence became a habit, a wall that I could not climb. I tried to tell myself that this was only a season, that every marriage went through quiet phases. But this silence felt different. It was not peaceful, it was heavy, distant, and cold. I woke up every morning to the same empty side of the bed, the same untouched breakfast plates, the same unspoken words. I smiled for Charlie, helped him with homework, played with him in the garden, but inside I felt hollow. I was living two lives, one that everyone could see, and one that no one would ever understand. At night, after putting Charlie to bed, I often sat in the living room waiting for Howard to come home. I would hear the garage door, the sound of his briefcase on the table, and then footsteps going straight into the office. The door would close, softly but firmly. He didn't say hello, and I stopped expecting it. I wanted to believe he was tired, that he needed space, that his silence wasn't personal. But as time passed, the excuses began to sound like lies I told myself to survive. One evening, I decided to do something different. I sent Charlie to my mother's house for the weekend, hoping that with just the two of us, we might reconnect. I cleaned the house, prepared dinner, and waited. The clock ticked louder with every passing minute. It was past 9 when I finally heard the car. My heart raced. Maybe tonight he would look at me again, maybe he would remember. But when he entered, he looked exhausted and distracted. "You're still awake?" he asked, his tone flat. "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "I thought we could talk." He nodded slightly and went straight into his office. I stood in front of that door for a long time. My hand hovered above the handle, wanting to knock, wanting to say his name. But something inside me stopped. My arm dropped slowly to my side. It felt as though I was standing before more than just a wooden door. It was a barrier built of silence, indifference, and forgotten love. In that still moment, I understood something painful yet undeniable. I was no longer part of his world. I was a ghost moving quietly through the rooms we once shared. Maybe he didn't see me anymore. Maybe he forgot who I was. The thought broke something inside me, not with anger, but with a quiet, deep ache that words could never reach. After that night, I made a decision. I needed space to breathe, to think, to feel like myself again. I packed a small bag for Charlie and me, and we went to my mother's house. I told Howard I just needed a few days to rest, and he didn't stop me. He only said, "Do what you need to do." His voice was calm, emotionless, and that hurt more than anger ever could. At my mother's house, the silence felt different. It wasn't heavy or cold, it was peaceful. Charlie played with his cousins, and for the first time in months, I could sleep without waiting for the sound of a door closing. But even in that peace, my heart still reached for him. I missed his presence, even if it had become distant. I still believed that maybe, deep down, he loved me but had simply forgotten how to show it. A week later, Howard messaged me. His words were simple: I miss you. I miss our son. I want you to come home. I will change. Reading that message brought tears to my eyes. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that love could still find its way back through all the silence. Against my mother's gentle warning, I decided to return home. I told myself that people can make mistakes, that maybe this was our chance to start again. The first few days back felt different. He smiled more, tried to talk, even cooked dinner once. I let myself hope. I wanted to believe in us again, even if the trust between us had cracks I could still feel. Then one evening, everything changed. Howard was in the shower, and his phone, left on the living room table, lit up. I wasn't looking for anything, I didn't want to. But when the screen glowed, the message appeared clearly. It said, I miss you. Did you think about me today? My hands froze. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to open it. The truth was already there, written in 10 small words that shattered everything I had tried to rebuild. My throat tightened, my chest burned, but no tears came. I felt empty, like someone had quietly stolen the air around me. When Howard came out of the shower, he smiled, unaware of the world that had just collapsed in front of me. I looked at him, at the man who once promised me forever, and realized that he was truly gone, even though he was standing right there. That night, I lay beside him in bed. He fell asleep easily, his breathing calm and steady. I stared at the ceiling, unable to move, tears finally sliding down my face. I had given him everything, my love, my time, my youth, my trust, and he had given his heart to someone else. Lying there in the darkness, I understood something final. He hadn't just forgotten me as a wife. He had forgotten who I was as a person. And there was no coming back from that. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The light from the window touched the edge of the bed where Howard still slept, calm and unbothered, as if the world hadn't shifted at all. I watched him for a moment, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with a quiet understanding. Something inside me had finally settled. The tears I had cried the night before had washed away the fear that once kept me silent. I no longer needed to shout or beg for answers. I already had them. I went to the kitchen and made tea, the same way I always did. The water boiled, the aroma filled the air, but it didn't comfort me the way it used to. I sat at the table, staring at the steam curling above the cup, thinking about the 10 years we had shared, the laughter, the arguments, the dreams that once seemed unbreakable. Love had brought us together, but silence had built a distance no apology could bridge. When Howard walked into the kitchen, I looked up at him. For a second, I thought about pretending, about keeping the peace a little longer. But I couldn't. My voice was calm when I said, Howard, we need to talk. He looked uneasy but nodded. I took a deep breath. I gave you 10 years of my life. I trusted you. I stood beside you when things were hard. But I can't live like this anymore. He didn't deny anything. He didn't defend himself. He just looked down and whispered, I'm sorry. 2 simple words, but they came too late. I felt no anger, no relief, just an empty stillness. I realized then that forgiveness doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means walking away with grace, even when your heart is still breaking. I packed a small bag for Charlie and myself. Howard didn't stop me this time. He stood in the doorway, eyes filled with guilt, but no words could fix what had already broken. I looked at him one last time and said softly, "Take care of yourself." When I closed the door behind me, I felt the weight of our years together fall away, heavy, but freeing. The air outside was cool, and the world seemed strangely quiet. Charlie held my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of direction. I wasn't leaving out of anger or hate. I was leaving to find peace, to find myself again. As we walked down the familiar street toward my mother's house, I whispered to myself, not away from love, but toward healing. Those words didn't erase the pain, but they made it bearable. I finally understood that sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is to walk away, not because love has ended, but because they have learned to love themselves enough to begin again. The morning at my mother's house was quiet, filled with the soft sounds of birds and the laughter of children playing outside. Charlie was in the garden, his small hands busy building a tower with colorful blocks. I watched him through the window, his smile bright and innocent, untouched by the sadness that lingered in my heart. For the first time in a long while, I felt still. There was no tension, no waiting for a door to open, no silence heavy with unspoken words. Just calm. As I sat there, holding a cup of warm tea between my hands, memories began to drift through my mind. I thought of the early days of our marriage, the laughter, the late-night talks, the way Howard used to look at me like I was his world. I didn't try to push the memories away. They were a part of me, part of who I had been. For a long time, I was angry that he had changed, that he had let our love fade. But now, sitting in that quiet kitchen, I realized that anger no longer served me. He didn't really forget me, I thought. He forgot what love means. Love isn't just words or promises. It's attention. It's effort. It's choosing the same person, again and again, even when life becomes ordinary. Somewhere along the way, he stopped choosing. And for a long time, I stayed, hoping that love alone would be enough. But love without presence is like a flame without air, it cannot survive. I looked outside again, watching Charlie run, his laughter echoing through the garden. I wanted him to grow up understanding what love truly is, not the fairy tale kind, but the real kind that requires kindness, respect, and care. I wanted him to know that leaving doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes, it's the most courageous act of love, the love you give yourself. I took a slow breath and whispered, "I'm okay." The words felt strange at first, but they were true. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I wasn't broken, I was rebuilding. I had learned that love cannot exist when one person disappears inside the relationship. To be seen, to be heard, to be valued, that is love. And when those things vanish, walking away is not selfish. It is brave. As the sun rose higher, I smiled softly. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone to come back. I was learning to return to myself. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep improving your English through emotional life lessons, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more meaningful English listening stories.